Hillary Clinton, Laura Bush, Michelle Obama, and Melania Trump, all on a day where they came in and they were greeted as first ladies to be by the sitting first lady. Of course, we don't have Jill Biden from 4 years ago because she didn't get the invite from Melania Trump. While she did extend an olive branch for tea today to Melania Trump, she declined. But a White House official tells CNN Jill Biden gave the president-elect a handwritten letter of congratulations to give to Mrs. Trump. And CNN is reporting this morning that Melania might not even move to the White House full time. My panel is here. Jeff?
Look, there will be many changes in the second Trump administration. That certainly we'll see how much of a central role she plays. Barron Trump obviously is in New York at school. She focused a lot of her time here when he was in high school at the time, but we are just learning from our colleague Arlette Saenz at the White House, the Trump-Biden meeting has ended. So this certainly will open up it's more than an hour, maybe an hour and a half or so. So we'll be scrambling to see what was learned and discussed in that meeting.
Yeah, well, that's the most important meeting of the day, and we will certainly be reporting on what happened there. Don't go anywhere. We are going to have coverage continuing of the meeting as they come out. Stay with us. CNN News Central starts right now.
President-elect Donald Trump returns to Washington, and CNN has just confirmed that his meeting with President Joe Biden in the White House has just wrapped as of moments ago. Biden hosting Trump in the White House for talks in the Oval Office, transition talks. The face-to-face, obviously a long-held tradition meant to pave the way for a smooth transfer of power, except, of course, 4 years ago, Trump refused the same courtesy for Biden. Let's play some video of what they discussed just ahead of their meeting this morning.
Well, Mr. President-elect and former President,
thank you.
Donald, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And looking forward to having like we said, smooth transition. Do everything we can to make sure you're accommodated, what you need. And we're going to get a chance to talk about some of that today. So
Good.
Welcome
Thank you
back.
very much. And thank you very much. And politics is tough. And it's, in many cases, not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much. A transition that's so smooth, it'll be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that, Jim.
You're welcome.
So that White House meeting is one of several stops for Trump today. He huddled with House Republicans this morning, where he backed Speaker Mike Johnson's bid to retain his leadership position. A secret ballot vote is set for the next hour on that. And just minutes ago, Senate Republicans elected South Dakota's John Thune to replace Mitch McConnell as the new Senate GOP leader, rejecting the preferred pick of Trump's MAGA allies, Senator Rick Scott. That also was a secret ballot. CNN's MJ Lee and Kristen Holmes are live for us from the White House. And MJ, this was a moment to witness Trump and Biden side by side in the Oval Office.
It was quite the moment, Brianna. After about 2 hours of the two leaders sitting in the Oval Office together behind closed doors, we've just gotten word from a source that the meeting has ended. And actually, I've just also heard that President Trump has officially left the White House. So skipping the very big group of press gathered outside of the West Wing for maybe a glimpse of the former president if he had chosen to come out. That didn't happen. Again, the former president has left after this very lengthy meeting with President Biden. As you showed there, President Biden welcoming the former president, his predecessor, and now the person that will be his successor to the White House with the words, "Welcome back." Of course, marking such a stark contrast from the kinds of language that we had heard from the president throughout the course of this campaign, describing his predecessor as a fascist, describing him as a real threat to the country. But now with this meeting, sort of cementing a principle that he has said is so important for the country to adhere to, and that is the peaceful transfer of power. I have been in touch with a number of White House officials and people close to the president here to try to get a sense of how they are sort of processing this moment. And I can tell you it has been a day where emotions have been running high. A lot of these folks here, of course, had expected and wanted a different outcome in last week's election. Were very disappointed when Vice President Harris ended up losing to Donald Trump. And some of the folks I talked to essentially said, look, it is going to be another crazy busy day at the White House, and we are just trying to focus on the work and this process that the president himself has said is so important, this peaceful transition from the Biden administration now in a couple of weeks to the Trump administration. We also know that President Biden, of course, had hoped to talk about a range of issues, both domestic and foreign policy related with the incoming president, including, for example, stressing the need, in his view, for the U.S. to continue supporting Ukraine's war efforts. What is not clear is whether President Biden believes that any of those urgings, his pleas, will have any kind of effect on Donald Trump, given that their world views on so many of these issues tend to be so contrasting. So again, this meeting between President Trump, President Biden has just ended, marking a real capstone moment for a campaign that has been so tumultuous. And we are seeing such a full, vivid picture of that transition of power that, again, President Biden had said was so important happen peacefully.
MJ, thank you so much for that update. Kristen, what about the view from Trump world? What more are you hearing about his big day back in Washington?
Yeah, Boris and Brianna, I mean, this really marks the beginning of the peaceful transfer of power. This is a key moment in the transition. One of the things, we've been discussing is Donald Trump naming these various people for cabinet positions, setting up the administration. But this really sets up the next presidency. And you can see in the way that Donald Trump is handling it, how he wants to set the tone. Now, obviously, to be clear, Donald Trump can very quickly go back on anything that he has done. But as we have seen so far, he has really tried to keep the tone about this transfer of power. He showed up today. There was press waiting for him outside of the plane. He did not stop and give remarks. He only spoke briefly at the House conference when he spoke there with Mike Johnson. And then he came here. We heard press shouting questions at him and Joe Biden. He really deferred to President Joe Biden. Joe Biden didn't take questions. Donald Trump didn't take questions. We obviously know Donald Trump likes to talk to the press, but it was clear, again, setting the tone here. And then he did not come out to the stakeout position. He did not speak to the cameras. There was an enormous amount of press here. So we'll see what he does when he gets back on his plane to go back down to Palm Beach. But this is really the first time we're seeing Donald Trump in public since he won the election. He has been meeting with his advisors. He has been planning for the transition. He has been going over various policy decisions, and he also has been playing golf, as we know. But this is the first time we are seeing the president-elect here, and it's on this trip to Washington. And just one thing to point out, Donald Trump is visiting a Washington today that is fundamentally completely different than what we saw in 2020 and 2016. In 2016, he showed up to a Washington that he did not understand completely. They did not understand the government. And while he had control, he being Republicans, had control of the House and Senate, Donald Trump is walking into a Washington this time around in which the Republican Party is the party of Donald Trump. So this is a kind of defining homecoming moment for the former president, now president-elect.
Yeah, very well put. Kristen Holmes, thank you. Live for us from the White House. Let's talk more about this now with CNN senior political analyst Mark Preston and presidential historian Lindsay Chervinsky. She's a senior fellow at the Center for Presidential History. And Lindsay, this is such an important moment, but you can't help but note that the last time we saw it was 8 years ago. This is, as we said, a courtesy that Trump did not extend to Biden when he won 4 years ago. What did you think about what you saw in the Oval Office today?
Well, I was struck by, of course, the historic nature of it. This has become a tradition that we expect. And while it is not mandated by law or written in the Constitution, it is a demonstration of the importance of peaceful transfer of power to our republic and to our democratic institutions. It made me sad that we didn't see it 4 years ago because it is so essential to the character of our nation. And I know that it's really hard sometimes when you or your party loses. And so I felt for President Biden, and yet was really glad as a historian that he did extend the invitation.
Mark, it's really a striking moment, not just for the historic precedent and for what it means about deferring one's own feelings and one's own self-interest for the institution, but also just because of the interpersonal dynamic between these two men and some of the things they've said about each other.
Can I first say that the most shocking thing to me today was the fact that when there were questions being shouted to both of them, these are two guys who enjoy taking a couple of questions from the media as they're walking away from the podium. So the fact that they had that discipline not to do so was in fact amazing to me. But these are two guys that don't like each other. Look at Joe Biden thinks that, Donald Trump, his brand of politics is a poison on America. I mean, he's all but said that, as does most of the Democratic Party. So I think what we've seen today was a good step towards civility. Again, there's a lot of predictions that this was not going to be a civil time, but we have civility right now. But let's get into the new year, and I can guarantee you that civility will go away.
Lindsay, when it comes to the utility of this kind of step in a transition process, I noticed that Trump spent almost 2 hours at the White House. What is it that they're actually doing behind closed doors? And if at all, does Trump's history as a disruptor of norms influence the way that meeting and those conversations go down?
Well, of course, we aren't privy to the conversations, but usually it's an opportunity to talk through some of the big issues that are in the president's daily briefing, whether it's, foreign policy or domestic threats, whether it's an opportunity to provide some guidance or talk through some of the challenges they might face. For example, Dwight Eisenhower and John F. Kennedy had one of these meetings, and Eisenhower really laid out the stakes of everything that was happening around the globe. And Kennedy later wrote how impressed he was by Eisenhower's grasp of everything that was happening. Because Trump is sometimes a disruptor of those norms, I think in this particular instance, he doesn't have a whole lot of ability to disrupt what President Biden is doing because he's still in office. But he certainly can encourage his new appointments to work with the people that are currently in power to try and have that smooth transition. His ability to disrupt really came more when he was in office, when he really either commanded that his subordinates didn't participate or he dissuaded them from doing so. And that did have much more of an obstructionary effect. This time, it seems like he's playing nice with the peaceful transition. But as they said, this could change in the coming weeks.
Mark, let's talk a little bit about his cabinet as it is taking shape, because we got some really interesting news since we spoke yesterday, and that is that Pete Hegseth, who is, yes, a veteran, but a newly former Fox News host, will be Trump's pick for defense secretary, and he's an interesting choice. He has no government experience. He's lobbied for the exoneration of accused or convicted war criminals. He's spoken out against women in combat, and he's also hawked grenade-shaped soap. Let's watch.
I've used them all, and I love these new brands. Like Gunsmoke, smells like American firepower. Or Gurkha, refined bourbon and tobacco leaf. Or how about Patriot and the Pine Tar Bar? There's more of them too.
I don't think I have to be a presidential historian to say that's probably a first for a SecDef pick. But is he seen as a serious pick?
Well, certainly in Trump world he is, because he will carry through the, America First foreign policy agenda that Donald Trump has been talking about. The question is, can he get through the United States Senate? And, there could be some pushback. We haven't seen an overwhelming support of people coming out and saying that he's a great pick from Republican senators yet. We may see that, in the coming hours, if not the coming days. But they were certainly reserved because people were surprised by this pick. They didn't think, where did this guy come out of other than he has been such a fixture on Fox and has been such a cheerleader for the Trump agenda?
There's also, Lindsay, an unorthodox move with the appointment of Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy to this Department of Government Efficiency, something that Trump has likened to the Manhattan Project. They're seeking to cut something like $2 trillion from the federal budget. What do you make of this move, and specifically who he's picking with the richest man in the world?
Well, if we put it in historic context, there are some examples of presidents pulling people from industry, recognizing that their business skills or the skills that they've developed in their own companies might be useful to the presidency. So, Dwight Eisenhower, Theodore Roosevelt, these are people that did pull on their business contacts. I think there are two key differences. One, they always put those business officials in positions that were confirmed by the Senate. And two, if there were any concerns about a conflict of interest, then those individuals were not confirmed. And in fact, Ulysses S. Grant's first Secretary of the Treasury nominee was rejected because he had too many financial ties to existing industry. And this makes sense because under a system of rule of law, we don't want one individual to be the judge, jury, and executioner on their own business, their own fate, their own fortune. And so if Elon Musk is determining which government contracts survive, my guess is he's going to choose those that go to him and to his businesses. And I think some Americans are likely to be uncomfortable with that, perhaps bias in that position of authority.
Yeah, a lot of questions about potential conflict of interest. Lindsay Travinsky, Mark Preston, appreciate the conversation. We have more breaking news into CNN. Senate Republicans have just elected John Thune as their new majority leader. We'll take you live to Capitol Hill to get reaction. Plus, bucking tradition, Melania Trump snubbing Jill Biden's White House invite. As we learn, she's unlikely to move back to the White House full time as First Lady.
And conspiracy theorist Alex Jones could lose his InfoWars empire today as it goes up for auction. New reports on who is planning to make a bid.